Okay, now it's my turn to give you a presentation. So I'm going to talk about mastering customer centricity with journey management, because to me that's the whole essence of journey management. It is that like how to become more customer centric, and it's a really good and powerful tool for that. But before we start discussing about customer centricity and journey management, I want to just kind of highlight that we are not actually doing that well when it comes to customer experience. This is from the Forrester's this year's survey, where they do. This is now the 9th year in a row, and at the moment in US, this is done in US, we are at the all-time low when it comes to customer experience in multiple aspects. And then you probably also have seen if you just look at your network, like how companies are today investing in customer experience, that a lot of our colleagues are actually being let go. And it is a really sad projection. And that's I think it's part of our kind of responsibility as a community to really focus on that. How do we use CX to really deliver business values? And that's a lot of the things that I'm going to discuss today. According to the same study, only 3% of the organizations can really claim to be customer-centric, which is really surprising if you look at like the numbers of like what kind of business benefits you do get if you really are customer-centric. 41% revenue growth, 49% faster profit growth, 51% better customer retention. Any business would love to have those kind of numbers, to say, but still, only 3% have the conviction to actually go to that route. Okay, so why is it so hard? So what makes it really so hard? Why organizations are not jumping onto these numbers that, hey, definitely, like, because if I would be presenting this to the kind of board of directors that, hey, I can promise you this, you should think that it's an easy sell. But it is difficult. It's not easy. There are a lot of different challenges. I have now kind of focused on 3 challenges that I want to highlight here, which I have discovered based on having discussions. The beauty of like focusing on like one thing is that when you meet people and you talk about the things, you talk about the same things. You start seeing patterns. So these are the reflections from the discussions that I have had with like a lot of different organizations this year, focusing purely on customer journey management, and then previous years focusing on customer experience. And these are the challenges. The first challenge is that how do you decide like where do you invest your resources? It's rather difficult today to kind of prioritize like what do you actually invest in. And a lot of the organizations, if you really like honestly think about your own organization, that how do you choose what features are you going to move forward, what things are you going to choose for the backlog? It's quite often it's the things that you have been doing for a while, so incremental improvements, or that they are based on some assumptions that we have a strong conviction that this is the thing that our customers want. And I would claim that like if you think about like how organizations work, over the years and centuries, we've been perfecting the way to create new things. But I think that the problem is not the way to kind of create new things, is that we are creating the wrong things. And this is like it's not my own image, I took it from Anton. It kind of reflects quite well on that, what is the internal chaos when you are starting to kind of create new products. You add feature after feature after feature, and soon you might end up into this kind of nightmare, which is not really anything that the kind of customers will enjoy using. And I think the reason for this is that a lot of the organizations skip the kind of the problem discovery phase. Like you don't necessarily have a clear-cut understanding on what are the problems that you should be solving. Instead, you jump straight into the solution creation, and you create like solution concept, and then you develop that and deliver that to the market. And I have a new name. I came up with a new name for this this model, this like last 2-diamond model, and I call it "Just Do It" model. I hope Nike is not going to sue me for this, but But the mentality is that let's just do it. Let's do it fast. We are really fast of creating things, but at the same time we are creating the wrong things. So one of the areas of it which journey management really emphasizes and improves is the first diamond. That how do you discover the highest value problems and opportunities that you do. So what we do in journey management is that when we're doing problem discovery, we look at all the journeys. We have identified all the kind of pain points and unmet needs, and then we create opportunities out of those. An opportunity, why I like to use the term opportunity, is not my invention, but I really love it, is that if you go to a meeting, let's say that you go to meet your supervisor and you say that, hey, I have these problems that we need to fix. It's a kind of negative thing. You're kind of coming with problems to me, but when you go there with opportunities, it's like a whole different ball game. Opportunities is much closer to kind of business success than having to solve a problem. And opportunities, it's not only that the opportunities are just renaming the pain point into opportunity. I really strongly believe that the opportunities should be the result of really analytic thinking, where you actually look at all the journeys and all the kind of pain points, and through analysis you deliver opportunities that are much bigger than a single pain point. And sometimes the opportunities are actually, they support multiple journeys at the same time. So when you have discovered the opportunities, what you need to do for those is that even though it's so much fun to just focus on the customer value creation and be the advocate and the evangelist of the kind of customer centricity, that we need to think about the customer. But if you really want to make a difference in your organization, you need to also emphasize on the business side of it. What is the business value that this opportunity generates? And when, as an organization and as a business, you make decisions, it's not only to kind of please the customer, but it's to create business. And that's why we use this, and this is actually something that they do also has in their kind of tool, this kind of opportunity matrix, where you have the customer value and business value. And now, if you think about that, you have surfaced all the kind of opportunities from all of your journeys. And now if you present them on this level, hopefully there would be more opportunities in that case. It kind of gives you the platform to start thinking on that, where should you really allocate your resources? How should you really decide on what do you actually do, put your efforts in? And then the obvious starting point is the top right corner, where you have the highest business value and highest customer value aspect. Okay, the second challenge is that what I've noticed that whenever I work with organizations and we do this kind of inventory of what are the assets that you have, what are the kind of processes that you are able, how you are collecting customer feedback. She was talking about that you have I think there's 4 million calls comes every year, so there's a wealth of knowledge into those. But what I have noticed is that with all these different kind of assets, if you start asking a bit further, so what do you do with those things? It's quite often that it's that we have these monthly reviews where we present the kind of the challenges or the data to this forum, and then we go about doing the things again, and we come back in the following months. And if you start looking at it okay, so what decisions is the organization making based on those things? It's quite clear that there's a lot of opportunities that are left unused. So these kind of data, they live in pockets, and quite often in organizations they are not really actionable. So they're not really are not really used. And if you think about it, it's quite a big investment for all the things that you have got. So what journey management does is it gives you the context where you can actually place the data in. I used to do quite a lot of kind of investigation on different kind of research repository solutions, because I was really looking for how do we make insights in how can we scale the kind of insight work and make them accessible for different people in the organization. And the one big difference between the insight repositories and journey management softwares is that the journey management gives you the context. So it's logical where the data is. So if you are starting a project and you can clearly say that it's this part of the kind of life cycle stage, for instance, and this journey that we are impacting. If you just go and look at that journey, and then you see all this wealth of information, it's contextualized, and it makes it much more accessible and actionable for the customers. The third challenge is in a large organization, I really think that the journey management is primarily geared towards helping large organizations to kind of succeed. And in large organizations, like which many of you represent, it's a lot about organizational silos. And silos are like natural when you are big enough, and there's nothing wrong with the silos, but there's a kind of consequences of that as well. And if it's not really mitigated well, it can hinder the organization's ability to succeed. Communication challenges, reduces collaboration, and then like above all, there's quite often conflicting priorities as well. Like one team doing one thing and another thing doing slightly different thing, but they're overlapping. I used to work at Nokia, like this is like when Nokia was in heydays, not recently, and I was responsible of the like Nokia music experience for devices. But I was full aware that there's actually quite a few people who can say the same thing. And I was like toying with the idea that if I would send an email to everybody at Nokia that who's responsible of this same thing, I would probably get like 20 to 30 people saying that's my responsibility. All of us being unaware of each other's. That's just because of the like large size of the organization. So, but silos present like a really difficult challenge when it comes to customer journey management. Is that like if you think about that, the customers really experience the kind of end-to-end journey, and the organizations kind of deliver that experience in like pockets of knowledge. And they are in the journey, those question marks are actually the parts that are not delivered by this same organization. So it might be like partner experience, or it might be just something that the customer does on their own, looks for information online. So you don't even have the visibility always to the entire journey. So this is the challenge. And sorry. And it seems to be kind of like, which I have find like quite fascinating, is that if you look at like the organizations and their maturity when it comes to digitalization, the more mature organizations are, the like smaller the focus areas tend to start becoming. And you have the kind of the famous Spotify model. Well, there's like squads that are really autonomous and they are really focusing on one thing. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm sure that it's really efficient way to do that, deliver the work. But if you remember, we are masters of like creating new things, but are we doing the right things? Are we doing the things that the customers really want? So that's why it's really super important to kind of have this kind of customer journey layer on top of all these different silos, and make it so that you have somebody who's actually like Siv at Telenor is owning the kind of the end-to-end experience. And in that role, it's like Siv's role is to, thank you, is to constantly like focus on the kind of customer experience, look at the customer journey, look at the performance of the journey, and continuously keep improving the journey. And it's a lot about also coordination, because you still need to kind of affect on the silo. So it's not that you can just like dictate things, but at least when you have this layer, then you have somebody who's really kind of responsible of looking after that. So you probably, if you're in your own organization, you probably need ideally new roles, people who have just one hat and they're just focusing on the kind of owning the certain journeys. But in most cases, you have to start from somewhere, so you start by giving like new role descriptions for people. And what I recommend is that these people, the journey owners, that they wouldn't actually come from the customer experience or design team, but you actually would get them from business or wherever that experience is being developed, that they would have the kind of ownership. So having distributed ownership, I think, is a key for success. So if after this event you are like convinced, if we kind of convinced you that, okay, journey management is something that I really wanna do, then what are the kind of things that you should be aware of when you get started? The first thing is that the biggest now that I've been interviewing a lot of organizations who have been doing it for a while, and the biggest challenge that many organizations have is that it starts in a silo, which often is the kind of the design or CX function, and you run the first pilots and you build the kind of the foundation there. But when you start from that point of view, it often also stays there. And then if you keep doing it over time, at some point somebody's going to come and ask that, okay, you're spending a lot of time on doing this, but what is the impact of that? And it is really difficult to make impact from that one silo. So if you remember the challenge that I had, what led to me kind of focusing on customer journey management, it still remains if you stay within that one silo. You can't really impact the organization from a silo perspective. So be aware of that. So when you're starting, don't start in like, let's just focus with the kind of believers and work with the kind of the CX people, but like invite other people from the business, like product managers, business owners, solution architects. Try to get as multidisciplinary team in place as possible. Then another thing, what I've noticed is that a lot of organizations, when they start, they hand over the kind of the tools and things for their people and say that go and start doing journeys. And it's fun for in the beginning, everybody's doing their own siloed learning experience and using it different ways. But at some point, you run into this point where it's a bit of a chaos. The honeymoon period is over, and now you start to like compare different like journeys, and different opportunities have been surfaced in different phases, and you can't really compare those because they've been done in a different phase. And the opportunity prioritization, which I think is the most kind of important process of journey management, is impossible if you don't have a like standardized ways of like scoring those opportunities. Otherwise, like it's about like gut feeling, and it's again assumption-based rather than fact-based. So start, even though if you start small, start like with the standardized approach. Then another one is that like often organizations start like, let's map all the journeys, and there's like in a way there's nothing wrong with that, but I recommend starting with like less, because you will have a learning curve over time. Plus, like when you start with the small, let's say 3 to 5 kind of journeys, you actually reach to the point when you can actually deliver some like results much faster. If you start with all the journeys, spend a lot of time, months and months and months, without actually being able to say that these are the outcomes of this. This is why we are doing this. But when you start small, you get to the point when you can actually start proving the value of the journey management to the rest of the organization. And then last remark is it's good to remember that now that we are talking about journey management, it's not the same as journey mapping. Journey mapping is part of the journey management, but creating journeys and mapping journeys, however wonderful those are, it doesn't really change the kind of organization. So you need to put a lot of emphasis on the management side of it. Like what kind of processes are you putting in place? What existing processes are you augmenting with journey management practices and so on? So put a lot of emphasis on the management. Otherwise, it's going to be just a lot of journeys which are not really that impactful. Thank you. Questions? It's a long pause always. Front, I can hand you the mic. I think it's on.
Thank you. So it's really interesting. So you talk about in customer-centricity, this sort of core challenge in getting this to be a business relevant tool and way of working. If you were to start from scratch on a new project now, how would you really emphasize in getting business on board from day one?
Yeah, good question, and thank you for that. Well, first thing is that you start with the multidisciplinary team. So you use the kind of, there's a, like Tedu actually has done a report on like the return on investment on journey management. So there's a lot of data there which you can use to kind of help to kind of invite the people from the business side to get them interested. And then, so when you have the multidisciplinary team, and then when you are starting to create journeys, one key moment which really lights up the kind of the business stakeholders' minds is that when you start integrating their KPIs onto the journeys. So like when you interview the business stakeholders and you want to understand what are the KPIs that they are being measured against, and then you start transferring those into kind of business metrics and putting those into the journeys. And it's really good for us as the kind of CX community also to start doing that, because by doing that, like over time, when you have the business kind of metrics and you have the customer experience metrics and you have the journey and all the insights there, over time, when you start working on those, you start to kind of show the correlation between the business and the customer experience. And then you can start proving that point. Good question.
Thanks, Cesar.
Bill.
Since you've been speaking to a lot of companies in Norway and Sweden and Finland and elsewhere, what do you think is the state of customer journey management in the Nordic companies? Are we skimming the surface, or are we ahead of the curve in the Nordics?
Yeah, maybe like Joachim has a broad perspective on the global journey management, but like what I can say that in Nordic, it has been surprising how much interest there is. Like when we were planning for the first event, we were thinking about maybe organizing an event of like 20 people, like 10 of them like our best friends, like just to meet up and let's start talking about it. And we had like 170 people sign up for the first event in Finland. Similar kind of like numbers in Sweden, and here as well, we had quite a big turnaround. So there is a lot of interest. There's very few organizations who have been doing it for a while. So we are missing the kind of the examples that you can use to kind of convince the other organizations. So I would say that we are in a very much in the, like if you think about S-curve, we haven't reached the kind of the product market fit yet. We are in like a really early phases, but there's a lot of interest. And luckily there starts to be a lot of like organizations who are now starting it. So if you ask that like one year from now, then we have a lot of learnings from different organizations. Good. How are we on time?
There's a question also from
okay.
Online. Are you recommending to set up new roles rather than teaching current people to do new roles and new ways of working? What is your experience? Do you see that role update is an opportunity to grow?
Like ideally, if your organization is a point that you can start hiring people, I would really like assign completely new roles. Because the risk is that if you like if you think about organizations, they've been organized around silos. So if you take one person and you said, okay, now you need to look at the end-to-end experience as a second job for yourself, that person is still being measured against that siloed focus. So it's really difficult to connect, and that's often the one which is the thing that is like quite current. So that's the one that is yelling the hardest. So it's quite easy you slip into this role that you forget about the journey management and you just focus on the things that you're being measured against. So that's why I really recommend new roles, but fully knowing that it's not kind of possible for all organizations. So then you need to start from somewhere, but put a lot of emphasis sort of creating like OKRs or whatever system you are using for those people so that they actually are doing the work and make sure that they have the time to spend on that.